Cool. Go. Okay. So you guys. Okay. So we just watched a video on the Backrooms. We're gonna go ahead and link it. It's a really good. It's a good video explaining what the Backrooms is. David, this is the first time that he's actually seen the video. Chloe showed this to me originally. She brought the information to me before, and I was looking around and found there's a couple other videos on this as well. We just watched the one by the Infographics Show. Again, we're gonna link it. There's some other ones out there, but this one was pretty much the best. It's great. I think the animation was good.
Mm-hmm.
A quick, succinct. It's very engaging. There's a quick narrative, except for the commercial right at the end that really kind of broke my.
Well, we really needed to get an injection of reality in there,
right?
And get you some of that Zaxby's chicken.
That's right. I really want some of that General Tso's chicken, by the way. No, it looks pretty good. I haven't tried it yet, but yeah. So it
really broke my immersion.
It did. It almost destroyed mine.
Yes.
So briefly, okay. So I kind of want to get your reaction to what you just watched, because I've had a week or so to sort of digest
ruminate.
This. But briefly, what the Backrooms are, there was an image posted in a 4chan like a while ago. 2019 or whatever.
Like they do.
In the original, Chloe might explain this better, but the original idea is that pretty much, and you can see the image up on the screen, pretty much everybody has seen that image, or at least you can relate to that image, right? So that looks to me, it looks like an office room. It looks so.
Leave that up on the screen just a little bit, if you would.
It looks like an office room. It looks like a room that, and I've been with a bunch of companies at this point throughout my career where a bunch of folks have been laid off. So what you see is like that looks like to me when you're up and you're walking around after a bunch of folks have gotten laid off, that you're walking through a space where there used to be a bunch of people and there's not people. Mm-hmm. They're not there anymore, right? So the idea is some way or another you clipped through reality and you landed in this place called the Backrooms, which is an endless maze of this dreary, drab, moist, carpeted expanse of nothing that is just
one room after another.
Room after room after room, where you've got these lights buzzing constantly above you.
Fluorescent lights.
The fluorescent lights with
pleasant. With
the noise constantly.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the same drab, uninspired wallpaper everywhere. And there's just endless amounts of it. That's it. What do you think? I've got more. I've got ideas, but I want to hear what you have to say.
Okay. So,
Chloe, did I miss anything in the description? Of the Backrooms? Because you had some other, when you introduced it to me originally, you had some other thoughts on it. Okay, no. Okay.
So at first I started thinking about all of the videos, the top 10 lists and stuff, the top 10 worst places you'll ever want to be, and stuff like that that my son watches, and as it kind of started to progress, it kind of reminded me of like a almost Twilight Zone, with a little bit of an SCP vibe to it.
SCP.
What is it?
Secure,
contain,
protect.
Yeah, secure, contain, protect. It's basically an internet repository.
Okay.
Of what would you call them?
Exozoologist,
paranormal. Paranormal creatures. Anyhow, and largely like the 4chan post, it's like one feeds off of the rest, and they just kind of continue.
Right.
But a little bit of that, and I kind of get the neo-Lovecraftian existential dread aspect too, but with a little more to go on than a picture and that description, it's just kind of uninspiring to me. So tell me what your thought. What am I supposed to get out of it?
Well, so there's a couple concepts. One of the other concepts behind this are, and this is what
kind of got a little bit of a Matrix vibe too.
Right. But one of the other concepts behind this, and this was you can look at this picture and you kind of either you can recognize it, like you can look at it, and the concept behind this is you can either recognize the picture, or you can relate to it on a level, even if you've never been there. You can relate to it on some sort of level where it feels
almost like a nostalgic fear of it.
Yeah. so you can sort of feel it, right? So and maybe you can't. I don't know. Maybe you like. Does that? No, nothing. Not doing that for you at all.
Based on the story, it's the fear of being lost, the fear of being trapped, and the fear of being watched or hunted in an environment that is completely unnatural.
Well, it's we talked about before about being in a place where you don't belong, and that sense of belonging giving you a sense of security. Like I feel like this is a place I'm supposed to be versus some place where you didn't intend to be. Things are off, and that kind of fear that captivates you because of that. Even if it's not dark and scary, the monsters chasing you notwithstanding. I mean, honestly, if you had stepped off an elevator and simply been in that environment with no perceivable way to get out and no understanding why you got there or anything, you don't need weird creatures chasing you to be scary. To be just completely mortified to what is going on.
So back when I worked with
that's real existential dread to me.
Yeah, unnerving.
Yeah.
The first company I worked with out of college was MCI, and there was a point where MCI had been bought out. I actually worked for WorldCom, but WorldCom bought out MCI, and WorldCom was the second Enron. So back when you think about Enron, with the big pyramid scheme and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, during that part in time, they started laying a bunch of people off, and I remember a couple of years into it, my manager at the time was like, "Hey, you sit in." I worked in a POP, so it was basically there's a bunch of telecommunications equipment everywhere. It's basically a giant server closet, essentially what it was. It was the size of an entire building, but that's what it was. I had a table and a chair, and that was it. And he's like, "You know what? There's a building that's across town. You guys go over to it, take your trucks. There's a bunch of cubicle gear that you can go to, and you can get stuff out of. Here's the key. Go and just get whatever you want. It belongs to the company. So go find stuff that you want and make yourself a little cubicle workspace. There you go." Yeah. So I was like, "All right, cool, let's go." So a bunch of us, myself and a bunch of techs, we jumped in the trucks. We drove over there, and what we were sort of confronted with is we got to this building, and there were several floors of the building. And I remember, I think it was like the third floor, fifth floor, it doesn't matter. Go up the elevator, and we come to this outside the elevator banks. There are these double doors, which look like open up into a big lobby of sorts. And they reminded me of like school lunchroom cafeteria style doors that had the big push handles on them. The
like
door,
the breaker bar handles,
like the breaker bars,
fire escape stuff.
The breaker bars, the key was for a padlock that connected that locked a chain that had been wrapped between those breaker bars.
Don't dead open inside.
Yeah.
Right. So of course I was with 4 or 5 other grown men, and we unlocked this thing, dropped the chain, pushed the door open, and walked into a building. It's hard to say how large it was, but it was huge. I mean, it was a big. Think of a full size building on a full size city block. The entire floor was lined with cubicles. These are the cubicles he was talking about. As we started walking up and down these cubicles, immediately it was strange, because looking over at these desks, there was pictures, there were like coffee mugs, there was plants, the dead plants, there were like all these things, and like even inside the coffee mugs, like some of them had a little bit of liquid in them left. Most of them had been just completely evaporated. All the plants were dead. There were like lunch boxes like sitting on tables and stuff. Like seconds ago, outside of the evaporated coffee, seconds ago, people that were there just poof and were gone. Right?
So it would almost be like they just kind of vanished, like they were ripped from that building or something.
That's right. And that's what it looked like. And I remember walking, and there was somewhere in the neighborhood of 600 cubicles, something like that. Like it was massive. It was huge. And later on, what we learned was there was a sales group that was there, and the entire sales group had been laid off. And the way they found out was they showed up to work the next day, and they saw the chain around the breaker bars. And that was 6 months prior, right? So we get there, and I remember walking up and down. That was like, I was young. I think I was in my early 20s, and that hit me. I was like,
unnerving.
Yeah. not only just the unnervingness of number one, like you're working in a place and all of a sudden the next day, boom, you're gone, right? And these people didn't do anything wrong. Like they, as far as I understood, they did a good job. The company was just like, you know what, you're done, you're out, laid the whole floor off. But as you're walking up and down, it was eerie because it looked like these people had just left. And I'll never get that feeling out of my mind. Like this happened 20 years ago, and I can still feel it like I was there today. It's just this really strange feeling that you don't belong. You're not there. It's an unnatural environment. Like listen, cities are unnatural. They're not. We're not made for cities. We're not made for buildings. We're not made for these things. This is nice, like where we're at. But it's not natural. Like the hum of the lights and the feel of electricity and the lack of wind and stuff, like all these different stimuli that we get from being outside is more natural, and our bodies sort of react to that, right? At the very least, like just think of getting vitamin D from the sun. Like you need that, because we're not going to get it from lights and stuff in here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in my mind, for me, that is what this brings back. Like it brings back that feeling of, think of the office we work now.
Mm-hmm.
There's like,
yeah, I'm sitting here drawing correlations in my mind of of not just that, but the previous building that I worked at went through similar situation where I was one of the last people there. Myself, a really limited skeleton crew, the people who operated the cafeteria, and security was about it. And we would periodically just kind of go tour the building, so to speak, and just look at all the weird stuff that was left behind. Look at the old furniture and go into rooms that had, even before the building had been vacated at large, certain parts of it had been vacated previously, and some of the furniture and stuff was in there. It was like, how this stuff's like been sitting here for like 10 years.
right.
It feels like. So yeah, and just walking around in an environment like that is unnerving, like you said.
And the other thought about it too, and this is what didn't click before, was when we opened those doors, like that had been the first time those doors were open in like 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So the air was stale, like it didn't feel, and they had, of course, they had the power shut off. Well, I think, they had the power shut off to the building. That was one of the first things we did, is turn power onto the floor.
Yeah.
So the power was shut off to the building. So the image, like
kind of what you're describing is what this picture would smell like.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, exactly. And that's where like, and so one of the things, a couple things that the backrooms that they're talking about is, of course, the featureless, emotionless. And I'm really sorry, because I know somebody actually probably designed this particular room there. They're like, "Come on, man, I thought he did a great
They're
job."
crying.
Yeah,
like,
they're all
"What,
upset.
man, come on, I worked real hard on this."
But this featureless, emotionless, like ugly room, with this old carpet and stuff, like that's, and it is like, you talk about existential before, when you think about like I hate working in an office building, dude. It drives me crazy. It's nice to have other people around and stuff, but God bless, it is just awful. But when you've got, especially like this, and you can imagine a bunch of cubicles and stuff crammed around here, but there's no sign of even humans here, right? And then the little things, just the little things that are off. The wet floor, the moist floor.
Yeah, it'd be almost like walking in through a like walking in through like an abandoned society's culture, like walking through their buildings, walking through their streets, and thinking that there should be people here, or there should be something here, but there simply isn't.
And that just unnerving feeling of just being alone when you shouldn't be alone.
And not only that, but I'm not supposed to be here.
Right. So you've got that. You've got the, of course, in the video it talks about, and all the legends, it talks about the strange way the guy got there, right? You've got the constant buzzing of the lights, which is unnatural, and I don't know, it gives me a headache.
Yeah, me too.
You've got the strange smell. You've got the fungi like grow in places and stuff. In what clicked, you talk about the strange creatures, the hounds. So get this. This is what clicked just now when I was watching the video, and I'm probably totally off. But the first thing that clicked, when he saw the woman in the power suit. Okay, so he sees the woman in the power suit after running from these hounds. Okay, so think about so he running from the hounds. Okay, he starts seeing different objects. Right, there's a point where he picked up the phone and kind of had to get his voice back and stuff. Right, but the woman in the power suit sees him and takes off. What happened when he first saw the hound?
It smiled.
It smiled, and he had the same reaction that the woman in the power suit had when she saw him. So maybe after, because who knows, it says, time kind of stopped, right? So maybe he looks like the Hound. Maybe the Hound are these people that were trapped there before him, right?
You just added a whole new layer on top of this.
So maybe they're the people who snatch people from Aloy.
when you start thinking about, first of all, the horror, right, of being trapped here with no purpose. That's the other thing too. You're walking around and there's nothing to do. There's no purpose, right? So you're not doing anything. And that to me is the horror of corporate life, right? Like we've talked about this before.
Isn't that the real horror of the zombie apocalypse? Is becoming a zombie. Like that's the horror of becoming a zombie, is just the mindless shambling, the constant hunger.
Right. And no satiation to any of that, right?
Yeah. And
so
all he's wanting to do is get out.
Right. He's just trying to leave.
He's hungry for freedom and for his normal life.
Right. So then you're running down, or he's running down these endless corridors where it's never seamlessly going to stop. It's never going to change. It's never going to go away. And you get this feeling of desperation when these things, the things that you have in life that you felt like mattered, like those, talking about his leather shoes, right? Now all of a sudden they become a crutch because he's slipping, he's sliding in this moist
shoe toys, right?
And so he throws them away. And now he's got these socks which were comfortable, which were warm. Now they hurt him, right? They're frustrating because he's slipping around them and stuff. He throws those away.
Nobody likes wet sock.
I know, it's gross. Not in wet carpet. Like that probably is one of the most horrifying things about this. Could you imagine running around on wet carpet all the time? Like that it's utterly terrible. Yeah, it's just terrifying. And then
I have flashbacks of the house flooding from a busted supply line behind the freezer.
And then when he sees...
Waking up in the morning and walking through the hallway and feeling and hearing...
or just the water sound in your house at all, period. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a leak downstairs not too long ago. And I remember
I don't want to talk about it anymore. I'm done here.
So he's running, in the video he's running, he finds this object, like he finds this filing cabinet, right? And he starts rifling through the filing cabinet, can't open it, just can't do anything with it, which again is frustrating because
this is like, familiar. I should be able to open this.
Right, but you can't. There's nothing you can do about it. Which again, just think about doing your job every day. Like you go and you're like, oh man, I really should be able to fix this thing with this email, or I should be able to call this meeting and talk to this person, and we're going to fix this this policy issue that we're having. And no, you can't. But there's no purpose to it. Why? Why can't I? Well, you just can't do it. So he's sitting there staring at this filing cabinet, and it's this constant maze, this endless maze. And you got this constant endless maze with no end, no winning. There's no going back. You're stuck. Like, I think of the term the rat race, right? They call it.
That's as bad as those dreams where you're trying to like run from something, and no matter how hard you push or try, you can't run.
Right.
Oh yeah, it's always gaining on you, especially like you're running away from, I hate to bring it up again, but the zombie, right? You're running away from the zombies, and they're just barely lumbering along, and you're just killing it trying to get out of there, and they just keep closing in.
And the worst part is like you're moving super slow, so you're frustratingly slow as you're trying to run away anyway. You're pumping as hard, your legs are pumping down, and you look down and you're not even moving, right? So that's what you're doing here is like you're running around, and even though you are moving, you can see yourself gaining ground. You look around and everything looks the same because you're not actually going anywhere. You're in the same spot.
I always got frustrated with that trope in like the slasher films. You'd have the murderer like just kind of walking menacingly, and the girl's running through the woods and screaming, and she's running hysterically, and he's just kind of, and he eventually catches up with her or something. It's like
she should be in a different county by now, right?
Yeah.
No, Siri. No, thank you. No, stop.
And then Siri, exactly.
Now you're talking to her again. Stop.
Hey Siri.
Oh my goodness. This is terrible.
So then you're welcome.
Then he's running along and he finds a phone, right? Like in this particular example, he finds a phone. It could be a phone. It could be any object, right?
I thought for sure it was going to say, "We've been trying to reach you about your car's extended warranty. This is our second attempt at contacting you."
The final attempt. It's always the final attempt.
How many extended warranties do you need? 'Cause I have 5. I have 5 on my vehicle.
Oh, you're good, man. You're covered now.
You think so?
Well,
they keep calling me, though.
Until they expire.
I don't even know when they expire.
How long can you warranty a 2000 Ford Escape?
Until the next one calls you.
She's
Good
right.
point.
You've got an endless line of suitors lining up to take care of your pristine.
I've never
wonderful
followed this
piece of
out to its
machinery.
conclusion. Do you use the Target gift cards to purchase the warranty, or how does this work?
The money pack cards from CVS?
Yeah, have any of y'all ever like actually like went through the process of extending your car's the warranty and stuff? Or
No, I haven't done it yet.
we'll have to talk to Dwayne about that.
I'm curious.
Let's take
I'm
a
sure
caller
Dwayne
and see if we have anybody who...
Caller 1, you're on the line.
Well, if we wait long enough, we'll get an extended car warranty. We can just
You're
ask
online
them.
with Frisky and the Dingo.
I was going to say, I've received like 3 or 4 phone calls while we've been sitting here. It's probably them.
It's all the same, yeah.
Dingo and the Baby. Gosh, that was a good Family Guy.
Dingo's ate your baby.
Yeah, the Dingo's ate your baby.
So he finds a phone, right? He picks up the phone, and then what is it? It's somebody frustratingly calling, and like in my mind, it's not even
about their cable service tech, right?
Yeah, and it's not even a metaphor, man. Like now this whole thing has become a metaphor for this endless, frustratingly going nowhere job. Like maybe that's what it is. It's this endless, frustrating, going nowhere job because you're picking up a phone and you're like, what can I do about your guy? 417, like, and of course, again, the person on the other end, like, come on, man, you told me 8 hours. You gave me 8 hours and still nobody's here.
Isn't that the most common, like, office type job is over the phone customer support?
Some sort of call center, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then he can't, the frustrating part about it is he can't do anything about it, right? So he picks up the phone call, talks to the lady, and is like, no, you're obviously right. Somebody should be there, but what can he do about it?
Do you think that the real existential dread here, though, is the lack of hope and direction?
He has no hope. He has no direction. Everything.
Maybe that's why I don't identify with this. Is I've got nothing but hope and direction. Maybe that's why it's been difficult for me.
You hoping for change? Is that what it is?
No.
Oh. And then you've got this, like, everything he tries, like nothing works, right? And then again, eventually he runs into the lady in the power suit and is like, hey, I need some help, or doesn't even get a chance to talk to her because she just bolts on him. And so I'm thinking, and I don't know, yeah, maybe you're the different one here.
Well, no, what I'm getting at is like your job, whatever you're doing, that's not what defines you as a person.
Absolutely, of course it is.
Well,
haven't you been paying attention to any movie written over the last 60 years? Come on, haven't you ever watched Hallmark?
Me and you might be different here, but like I see that like my job is more of a means to an end. It's the people I interact with, the relationships I have outside of it that are what are really important.
But aren't you an IT person? Isn't that who you are? Isn't that
IT
your
people?
definition?
What? No.
It's
I don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe it's about perspective. I got nothing but hope, dude. Nothing but hope.
He's more of an IT
direction.
crowd.
Am I? Oh gosh.
What?
Don't even get me started.
It's tough, man. It's tough because if you're stuck in this.
Our boy, dude. He always he tells us about how that show's great and that the IT crowd and the Big Bang Theory and all these shows that he's watching. I'm like, dude, that's insulting to us as IT people. As like, it's literally poking fun at things that it's.
Well, the worst thing about it is a bunch of beautiful, like good-looking,
pretending
rich
to be dorks
Hollywood people poking fun at a bunch of IT folks.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and it's I don't know if it happened with any other subculture, it would be appropriation. It would be
unacceptable.
Yeah,
unacceptable.
It would be totally prejudice if it
right.
I don't know, stuff like that aggravates me. And because of that, I don't really care for those shows.
But I think I don't know, in my mind, we're talking about the Backrooms, and maybe it's a real place, I don't know. But in my mind, to me, it's talking about that dread where a lot of people feel, obviously not you, that this is their life now. They're stuck in this endless maze of, like he said, red tape and bureaucracy, of where you're not going to get anywhere. You're not able to go anywhere because somebody else somewhere not only is controlling your life, but they're not even there. They're absent, right?
Yeah.
It's like you're by yourself, stumbling through this maze all by yourself. You don't know. I just said that. You don't have any direction of where you're going, and even if you get to a place and you try something, it's not going to matter. No matter what you do, it's not going to matter. And that, I think, for a lot of folks, dude, I think that is kind of terrifying. But think about this as a terror threat, like that terrorizes you internally. Like, this is a new kind of phenomenon. This is kind of a new thing. But where I was going before with you was, we start thinking about this, because this is a reality for a lot of people across the world, like dealing with these office buildings and stuff like that. Totally unnatural, totally not what we've been doing really for the bulk of humanity. We've only been doing this for the past 100 years or so, like not even that many times.
We've been worried more about getting fed than filing those reports.
And the other part about this was the as folks look at this feeling of, like, I look at it and go, I don't know about you, Scotty. I look at that and go, yeah, I recognize that room, right? It feels very familiar. Like Chloe said before, it feels like scary, nostalgic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for me and for you, is this a new entry into that? As we all look at this and we're like, man, that is part of our reality. Is this a new entry into that sort of Akashic database that links us all together as human beings? There are people that are saying that they've seen this in their nightmares,
mm-hmm.
that they've seen these places, because there's a couple different ways to get to the back rooms. One of the ways is to clip through a wall, potentially, which is always fear, because there is that fear, like you said, of sort of that Matrix style, like reality isn't reality. And heck, if you study string theory for like 20 seconds, you realize that like string theory is going to say that all of this stuff is based on frequency. As soon as you change frequency, you change what you can actually see, right? So, and you do that like NASA. Anytime you look at any of the pictures from the Hubble Space Telescope, it's not what it looks like, right?
No.
It's not a giant camera taking pictures.
Yeah.
It's taking pictures across multiple spectrums, including radio spectrums, non-visible light, all that stuff, and they take that whole thing and they mash them together.
Synthesize it, yeah.
And that's the fun part. Like when flat earthers go, that's not a real picture of the Earth. You're absolutely right. It's not. Like somebody has taken like 50 pictures and put them all together in a composite to create the Earth, because your lens just can't quite do it like that, right? So that's the funny thing. So anyway, maybe this is this sort of, I don't know, this collection of, where was I going with that?
This collection of images in people's minds about hopeless despair of a modern corporate life.
And that hopeless despair has changed from what it was 100 years ago into something different and something new and something equally as terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Just like 100 years ago, you might be worried about wandering in the woods and being attacked by wolves.
Getting the plague.
Right? And now it's...
Oh, wow. Where are we right now?
And now it's
plague.
It's wandering around this desolate office wasteland, being attacked by soulless automatons so they could steal your shoes and run off. You know, it's just kind of weird. Anyway.
Hand-stitched loafers.
Hand-stitched leather loafers. That's right.
Video games made it very easy to visualize what it's like for that to happen. With using no clip from all the way back in the Doom days, to be able to just clip through a wall, and then you start seeing the empty void that is anything and everything
into
around.
Nothingness.
Yeah.
And it also sort of intensifies the terror a little bit too, because now you, like you said, you can visualize it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like not only can you visualize it, now it starts to think, you're like, wait a minute, if I can do this in Doom, or I can watch Doom or Avatar or these movies that look hyper realistic, right? Or play these games that are hyper realistic, and you go that Matrix route and you're starting thinking, wait a minute, what if I am living in this hyper realistic thing, especially, or this hyper realistic, and then you start thinking about all the laws and the different violation of the laws and stuff, and things like think about, for example, time slowing down around black holes, stuff like that. You're like, wait a minute, if those laws are breaking down, then is that just a no clip for our world, right? So it becomes more, I don't know, almost becomes more real that you can just kind of push through something and no clip through it, and stuff happens all the time. There's another video that was talking about the pictures of you've seen this before, the pictures of the airplanes just like floating in air, they're not moving, right? And people take videos of them moving around, hoax or not, right? It's easy to believe. You're like, oh yeah, I could totally see something like that happening, or seeing a doppelganger of somebody. Like there's that picture of that one dude that's sitting, he's like eating pizza, and then there's a guy behind him taking a selfie, and the dude eating pizza looks exactly like him, is dressed exactly like, and they're like, that's a glitch in the Matrix, right? Sort of thing, like when the cat jumped across the thing. So now that we're starting to get to the technology where we can replicate this in virtual worlds and stuff, now all of a sudden, because think about VR, right? Jumping around VR, we're walking around Mount Rainier and we're looking at stuff or whatever, and then when the glitch happens, you're like, oh gosh, because this looked really real up until the glitch happened. Well, it looks really real here up until the glitch happens, and that's kind of what this is. Maybe that glitch. part of the glitch of, oh gosh, you're slipping out of time, and it's becoming part of that, really the tapestry of horror that we've weaved into our, I don't know, genetic DNA or however we pass it down.
What about whenever we get to the point where we're so comfortable with this existence that we start to, and I think we have to some degree, we start to forget what it is to be in our natural habitat. And how many times have you been out in the woods and been like, I don't belong here. This isn't right.
Tell your story about the hipsters and the bear.
The hipsters and the bear.
Remember, you and your wife, you went to a primitive campsite up in the Blue Ridge.
Yeah.
And you guys had gone out there specifically hammock camp, because it truly is the superior way to camp. And
28 degrees.
Right. It was cold. But you guys had moved out, and as you guys were building camp, these two young kids had come by. It was a female and a male, you said. And they came by, and they popped in and said hi during your tent site, right?
Yep.
You guys had a quick interaction, a quick exchange.
Yep.
And you said, all right. And their campsite was like, I don't know, a couple 100 yards past yours or something.
Yeah, probably about a quarter mile. Yeah.
Yeah. And what they had done is they had gone up to camp. You guys had a quick exchange, and you noticed, if I remember correctly, and stop me, this is your story, I don't remember, but you had mentioned something about the backpack and mentioned something about food. And you said something to him about, hey, take that food, make sure you don't put it inside your tent. Do you remember this?
I didn't. That exchange happened the next day. So let me pick it up from where you're at now.
Yeah.
So we got set up. As we were setting up camp, these two came by, and looked like they were heading down the trail. This trail has a trailhead on the high end and a low end where you can exit the trail at the bottom if you want, and things like that. And all along the way, there's campsites. And they had moved on and set up their camp. And somewhere in the course of the night, me and Tracy are making dinner. It's dark already. Camp's been set up, and we get a visit from a bear. And he just kind of comes around the corner, pokes his head up. We scramble to try to be ready in case he does get closer and wants to cause any trouble. So he thankfully, turns around and goes back the other way, because he's like, hey, I smelled food and you guys aren't supposed to be here. It's October. What are you doing? So bear goes away. And the next morning, that couple comes back through, and Tracy's still in the hammock. I'm up doing breakfast stuff, and they come back through, and they're like, hey, did you guys see anybody come out of here with a backpack? And it's like, without even missing a beat, Tracy pokes her head at him, and she's like, did you see a bear? and long story short, what had happened is, I told him, your pack, where did you put it? And he told me where he put it. I said, did you have any food in it? Oh yeah, we had this, but it was in bags and stuff. And I was like, your pack's probably about less than 100 feet from your campsite. It's probably somewhere close. Of course, he goes back later and finds his pack that's been shredded. Finds almost everything except the food, his car keys, and his wallet.
And thankfully, he left his backpack they didn't have it in the tent.
They didn't have it in the tent.
He had left it outside.
He had just put it on a tree branch outside of their tent. So fortunately, they didn't have it in the tent with them, or it probably would have been an uglier situation. But yeah, so I mean, there are reasons to be scared in the woods, but being alone in a peaceful woods shouldn't be disconcerting to us. It shouldn't be something that unnerves you.
But I think with our society, it's almost gotten to a point.
Unless you find a staircase. That's a whole other thing.
That's what you stay away from. Yeah, don't touch it. Don't go near it. Definitely don't go to the top. Yeah.
Don't approach any staircases you find in the woods under any circumstances, no matter what they look like. Old rusted iron staircase, staircase from a turn-of-the-century mansions. Do not approach the staircase. Ignore them. Tell no one about them, and move on.
Pretend they're not even there. And those are the things when you think about so the woods are a very dangerous place, right? Not because of bears, not because of rampaging
stairs,
fairies, or I don't know, whatever attacks you, hobos, I don't know.
Yeah.
But the woods are dangerous because in like back in, was it 96, 94, Blair Witch came out.
Mm-hmm.
It for me, it brought back this sort of this terror of, gosh, I can step off the path and be completely lost if I got turned around. There was this, there's a book by Stephen King called The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon. Fantastic book. And literally the beginning of the book is the girl steps off the path of an Appalachian Trail. She goes off into the woods like 20 feet or so. She can still hear her parents. She can still hear her brother. She can hear everybody. And then is gone. Just gets lost. And this happens all the time. There's that, remember that show that we watched? Was it Missing 411?
411.
Yeah.
Good series.
Where people just disappear. And you know, it's probably Sam Squanch's, right? But
I think it's on Amazon Prime right now, but it is a really good series. There's several of them.
It's just folks. A lot of it is just folks getting turned around because you either can't see the sky or you don't know how to get where you're going. And sometimes just going 100 foot in one direction, turning a couple degrees, going 100 foot in another direction, and now you're in the middle of 1,000,000 acres that you can't get back to.
Or just taking 1 foot off an elevator.
I was going to say, does it not lend back to this whole concept now? Like I said, it's still, it doesn't resonate as much with me, but I get it. I get why people would feel that way. The woods thing, like I'm a woodsy kind of person, and like still there's times when I'm out in the woods and you just kind of get that unnerving feeling, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it.
Yeah, I feel that way in cities. I'm very comfortable in the woods, but I feel, except for that day we were playing disc golf. Remember, it was right around dusk. We had done 18 holes, and we're sitting on the last hole as we usually do. Right, about to empty our bags, you know. And we were sitting there. It was I don't know. It was just about dusk, where the sun had dropped down, and there was this purple, sort of orange in the sky, and the woods around us got quiet, and we noticed it.
Yep.
And we were sitting there, and all of a sudden, coming from the right, there's kind of a drop off into a little valley, and just on the edge, on the 18th hole, the big old coyote. Remember?
Ran across
She came up, and she sort of came up, and she saw us. She had one of her ears were perked towards us the entire time. She stepped up onto the grass and started walking across, like we weren't there, but she knew we were there, and we just froze. And that was a big animal. And the woods were super quiet, you remember? And she walked all the way across, and then up a little hill, and then down behind, out of our sight. Life came back into the woods for a moment. But I remember both of us sort of looked at each other like, I mean, it was
pretty awesome.
It was awesome. It was
pretty awesome.
It was.
Any encounter with nature like that's awesome.
But it was very jarring, right? Because here we are, we're sitting there playing disc golf, we're goofing off, whatever, about to throw a bunch of discs in the bag, and all of a sudden this giant animal just comes out, a predator, right? Comes out of nowhere, walks past us like we weren't there, like she was watching us. She had to have been. She knew exactly where we were, and she came out. How long she been watching us? How long she been around? Yeah.
She's like, what are you all gonna do?
Comes out of nowhere, and then you just get this feeling of, I'm being watched. I'm not alone. I felt totally out of place in that moment.
You almost feel violated, like something was watching you without you knowing about it.
Yeah, watching all my terrible golf.
Yeah, but
like you have my terrible golf skills.
But either way, the feeling that someone has been, because a lot of times somebody's watching you, you make eye contact, you know that somebody's watching you.
It was mostly just disappointment in my putting.
To get the feeling that
something's feel it oozing from her.
To get the feeling that something's watching you, and that you had no clue that it was that close.
Yeah, it was eerie and it was jarring.
And it took you a while to realize everything just went quiet.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the most. I think that's why the writer of the Backrooms, or the person who brought it to the media, emphasized that there were creatures that were humanoid figures, and whether or not they're humans that have been there a while, or whether their natural habitat is there, I think it just adds on to being, you're not supposed to be here. This is our house, and we like it. Get out.
Right. Yeah, you definitely get that feeling of, I don't belong. I don't belong.
Especially if you don't know they're there, and then you're like, oh, how long have they known I've been here?
Right. Yeah.
It just makes it like 10 times more creepy for me.
Yep, agreed. And so I think it's a new type of horror for a new type of generation that has to deal with a situation that, because that other our people, like humans, we haven't had to deal with before. Like this is a new type of horror that people haven't had to deal with before now. Like it's in our genetics to see something, judge and run. Like if it's a bear or something like that, like that's in our genetics. Like most people either freeze or they run, right? This here, I don't think we figured out how to deal with it yet. How do you deal with endless cubicles or endless offices with wet carpet in these crazy overhead lights with no end of like you said, bureaucratic red tape and no end of you have no purpose for being here.
Mundane,
not only do you not belong
monotony.
here, but no purpose for being here.
Yeah.
And that is just, it's soul draining. So anyway, that's it. Well, thanks for walking through the back rooms of this. I thought it was
Don't let John Carpenter find out about this, or like we'll have a string of cult movies about
well, at least John,
empty office buildings.
at least John the Carpenter can come and fix these wet floors. That would be nice.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Yes, please do.
Okay.
Starring The Rock.
Thanks for going down that path with us, dude.
That was weird. Never do that again.
It usually is. Yeah, go ahead. You can shut it off.